Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 146th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You can get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, so get a subscription to bostonsportsjournal.com and check that out as well. With me today, I have the Boston Herald, Steve Conroy, to talk all things Bruins. And I think we will also have a longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo, at some point. He will be dropping in, parachuting in, I think, to the podcast. Not here at the start, though. Let's thank our sponsors, though, real quick before we get going. Prize Picks, our good friends at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank the folks at Game Time, where you can get all of your tickets, concerts, comedy, sports, all of that stuff. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Steve, what time is it?
It's game time?
Yeah, game time. That's right, Steve. Let's get into it. All right. Hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm going to take a live phone call on the podcast from Mick Colageo. Mick, what's up?
Hey, do you want me to come on?
Sure, you can come on right now. We're right in the middle of the podcast. You can drop in and just jump into the mix.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye. See, there you go. Look at that. That's like multi-platform communication type thing going on there. I love it. All right, let's get into this while Mick joins us. Steve, 4-2 win for the Blackhawks last night. For the Bruins over the Blackhawks last night. Solid win. 6-2 now under Joe Sacco since he took over. I think now we can kind of probably agree that the coaching change was needed. The coaching change has made a difference. I think there's been a marked difference in the way that they've played since the coaching change happened. For whatever reason, we see this happen sometimes when a new coach comes in. And I think it has definitely sparked and worked, whether it jolted them, whether it, was a wake-up call for some guys, whether they needed to hear a different voice, whatever the reason is behind it, they've played differently since Sacco took over.
Yeah, they've played much better. Yeah, one of the focuses was to protect their own slot. They had been giving up a ton of goals, seam passes right through to the top of the crease. It was a mess defensively, and that is cleaned up without a doubt. They're also more physical, and they're getting to the spots where they can make those hits right now. Hits is a very funny stat. It could mean something very bad. Could mean you never have the puck.
Yeah, it could mean you're chasing the puck constantly.
Yeah. But the other night against Detroit, it varies from rink to rink as to how these hits are recorded. But I don't know if you saw it. The Bruins were credited with 40 hits to the Red Wings 14. It's not like the Bruins were chasing the game all night long. I mean, it was pretty even, but they definitely established a physical presence in that game, and it showed up in the third period when they had to take a couple of penalties. Detroit had to take a couple of penalties down low on Pasternak, and one of them tied the game for them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things at play. You're absolutely right about protecting the house, protecting the slot, paying attention to detail, being more physical. They're taking less of the really wildly undisciplined penalties, much less offensive zone penalties now, too. They've really cut back on that. Their penalty kill, I think, is at like 95% since Joe Sacco took over as well. So, that is cranking at what it used to in previous years and is kind of back to form. And really, in a lot of ways, the Bruins are just basically playing much more like the Boston Bruins, like their identity now. And they have been in the last 8 games. Sure, they're still 30th, 31st, 32nd, somewhere down low as far as offense goes, goal scoring, as far as the power play goals, some of the offensive categories. It's probably going to take them a while, and they're going to have a few more 4-goal, 6-goal kind of outbursts before they're going to start climbing up the charts a little bit.
And let's pump the brakes a little bit. They still haven't beaten a team that's inside the playoff structure.
Yes.
So
100%.
It
was a big win
against
Yes, it was a big win against the Red Wings because I think those are the kind of teams they're going to have to fend off in the Atlantic. But to your point, like none of these teams are what we would expect to see in the playoffs, the teams that they're beating right now. But they are taking advantage of it, and they are winning the games they're supposed to win, which they weren't necessarily always doing in the first 20 games of the season either. They were getting smoked by some good teams, definitely. But they were also either eking out or not getting the win against teams that they needed to beat. So, I'll give them credit for what they're doing, while I think that's a great point that they need to do it against playoff caliber teams before we're truly going to buy in that everything is for real that we're seeing. Mick, your thoughts, and we preface this and open this by just saying it's been 8 games now, 6-2 under Joe Sacco, 15 goals allowed in 8 games, which is excellent. 23 goals scored, which is close to 3 goals a game. In those 8 games as well. So we're starting to see, I think, the Bruins play more to their identity, play much better brand of hockey, a winning brand of hockey, and really back to what we expected them to be after it was such an outlier and aberrational hockey the first 20 games of the year. So for whatever reason, whether it was a new voice, whether it was a wake-up call, whether it was a jolt, whatever that they needed, the Bruins seem to have gotten it from the coaching change. And for that matter, the Blues have with Jim Montgomery down in St. Louis too.
Yeah, being fair. The first 3 games I felt like were definitely the coaching change shock wave that goes through the team and how it kind of shakes them out of the doldrums, and they got more energy, and every little way that they play the game, there was an uptick. There was also, with that, and good for Sacco, simplifying of thought. And once they got to the point where they were going to have a struggle offensive night and wound up losing a couple, then I said, okay, now we're going to see what Sacco can do with these guys. And at that point, we're starting to see a couple of wrinkles. Putting Zadorov and Carlo together as a shutdown pair is an interesting one. One of my online friends referred to it as Chara Seidenberg. And then the Osterley, who comes up, a journeyman offensive defenseman, comes up from the minors, and is right now is functioning in a very Grizzly-like way with McAvoy. So it's so far. I don't consider either of those situations permanent, but I do see that. And the other thing that I really see is the Bruins are making sure that they get bodies to the net when they get in a shooting situation. And so there's more resolve to shoot the puck, more bodies at the net when they do. And I like the reuniting Pasta and Marchand made sense. I realized Lindholm and Pasta didn't go well. Now it seems to be going well. So Marchand was the missing link there, I guess. So what happens?
Well, I mean, Lindholm is definitely doing what he needs to do on that line, but that was he really didn't have much involvement in what was going on offensively last night. That was pretty much Pasta and Marchand making those things happen. But he's doing what he needs to do to play center, to be a good two-way center, to be a support guy for that line,
which is very similar to Bergeron's role when he was with those guys.
Yes. Yeah, but with less finish, right? He's on, and we'll talk about Lindholm actually as a separate topic later. But it worked. There have been times where Joe Sacco's done some coaching things that have absolutely worked, and last night was one of them. Putting Lindholm and Pasternak and Marchand together, and for that matter, having Sacco with Brazeau and Geekie really worked too, because they ended up scoring a couple goals as well. You got 2 goals from each of your top 2 lines were in that game. So the line changes and the forward changes he made in that game absolutely worked. There's been times he's put the second power play unit out to start a power play, and I know some of it was about the first power play unit maybe being a little tired, but he's done that at times and it's worked as well. The pairing that you're talking about with Carlo and Zadorov, I think, is a really sound idea, and I like that they're doing that. Osterley is one that I think is really interesting, and it's funny. I asked Joe Sacco the other day about that, if he attributed any of McAvoy's early season struggles to Grzelcyk being gone, because they played together so much over the years. And I think, frankly, McAvoy's preference in the past was always the default was to go back to Grzelcyk and to play with Grzelcyk. And he really had a comfort level playing with him, having been with him at BU and then with the Bruins. And if that was, part of a rocky transition for him, and obviously he's a great defenseman, he should be able to play with anybody. But I think your point about Osterley kind of playing in a Grzelcyk vein with the way that he plays as a puck mover, as a fast guy, as a guy that can escape the zone, and as a creative getting out of the zone, I think is a great point.
Well,
Mick. And I think he does.
I think what it does is it frees up McAvoy to think more offensively, because if the Bruins are going to be weak on wing from a personal standpoint, behind Pasta, you don't have a lot of goal production. So you really need that 4-man attack. You need your defensemen to feel like being offensive when the opportunities present. And so I think that this gets McAvoy a little more in that vein to think that way with the puck movement that happens. So I think what we're getting here is the Bruins are becoming a little more of a matchup team.
Yeah, no, they are. And I also think with McAvoy, though, Mick, even though, yes, it does free him up a little bit maybe to think offensively and be the fourth man in the offensive zone, I think he is also taking more of an active defensive role with a guy like Osterley, too, when the puck is in the zone and he's not freewheeling as much as he was the first 20 games of the year, where it seemed like he was roving a little bit and he was shirking some of his defensive responsibilities. And there was a lot of zone issues going on, coverage issues going on in the first 20 games of the year, and with McAvoy in particular, which I don't think he's doing now, because I think with a guy like Osterley, that's not really a stay-at-home, like battle in front of the net kind of defenseman. I think McAvoy is feeling responsibility to also play that end of the ice as well. And like he's had a 2-goal game. He's had a couple of good offensive games, but there's been a lot of games in this 8-game stretch, I feel like, where he's played 26 minutes, has no points, has like 4 or 5 blocked shots, has a bunch of hits, and is playing the defenseman position. He's playing it in all zones and doing it the right way, and looking more like the number one guy that we've seen in the past. Steve, what have you seen out of McAvoy as of late, and what do you kind of attribute maybe an uptick in play to what we've seen lately versus the first 20 games of the year?
Yeah, I think Osterley has certainly helped. He's been in the league a long time, and frankly, I didn't know that much about him.
I didn't know that he had over 300 NHL games. Like, I didn't realize he had been around for that long and been with that many teams. I had no idea.
I'll stay silent and act like I've known his whole career.
But yeah, I mean, McAvoy has been aggressive offensively. He looks like a guy who is understanding that a lot more is expected of him, and he's grabbing that responsibility. It waxes and wanes with him, as we know, but how he's playing right now is very good, and he seems to be more willing to come out and talk to us a little bit more lately,
especially after losses.
What's that?
Especially after losses.
Yeah.
Which has always been tough for him because he's a competitive guy, and
I
get it.
Yeah, and that's all part of becoming a leader, and that's what he's expected to be. And, I like the way he's grabbing it right now.
I credit Marchand for the locker room end of that.
Well, Marchand's terrific. He's always been terrific.
Yeah.
Even when he gets a 5-game suspension, he will own up to it.
Yeah. They have to try to find ways to steal him away and hide him somewhere so he can't talk in those situations because he wants to,
Yeah.
And that's why he's a star on TNT along with Biz and all the stuff that they're doing. I don't know. Did you guys both see what last night?
Yeah. It was actually pretty funny, I have to say.
I mean, it was really funny. But Bissonnette is fantastic on TNT. I think he makes for great entertainment and is really bringing an element of the NHL and the fun of the NHL and the players out that you have to bring out because it's there, especially with some of the personalities in that game. It's there if you can do it, and it's there for the taking to make the NHL a much more enjoyable, fun, sort of lighthearted. When you can get a couple of guys like that are master chirpers going back and forth with each other, that's just like high entertainment.
But more than that, he's got some pretty comic timing, and
Yes.
able to keep the straight face with the collar on and the bandage on his head. It was pretty good.
Yeah. And he lit into Marchand at the end too, saying like, you got one coach fired because of the power play. You're going to do it again, or like, what are you going to do now? And less comedy act, more scoring with one power play goal in 27 games. He was ready for that, Biz, which was pretty funny. But I think you're right, Mick. I attribute some of that to Marchand and the example that he sets. But I also think that this is the maturation of Charlie McAvoy, right? Like, it was funny that so many people that aren't sort of in the day-to-day workings of the Bruins locker room, of how the players operate, of everything that's going on in there, were so gung-ho about McAvoy being the captain of this team when it was up after Bergeron retired. And I think didn't realize some of the stuff that he's still a young guy and he's still maturing into that sort of role and into being that leader. And he wasn't quite the fully formed leader that I think you really need to have if you're going to have a captain of an NHL team, an original six team, a Stanley Cup contending team. And he wasn't quite there yet. And I think what we're seeing now is McAvoy sort of making those final maturation steps into being the leader by example, into being the leader by word and deed, into being there to answer the tough questions after a loss, win, lose, or draw, no matter what it was, and sort of setting the example for everybody else. And I think we're actually seeing now Charlie McAvoy start to exhibit the traits and the characteristics and all the stuff that you need if you're someday going to be a captain of the Boston Bruins. And I think, being there and being accountable to us is one of those things, and I've definitely noticed it.
Well, when Hannah Wolf comes around to us at some point in the third period and takes our request for post-game interviews for players, we give some names, and then it turns out to be a dismal loss, and this is before Monty got fired. And you go down there, and you don't see any of the guys you asked for. You get Marchand, you get Pasternak, you get McAvoy, the C, the A, and the A. And to me, that's Marchand taking their list and going, they were the guys who need to talk about this tonight. It's us. And I feel like that has kind of heightened McAvoy's awareness of what you're talking about, Joe, and made him better in this situation. And so it's this could be a huge growth season for McAvoy in that regard.
And a quick sort of word or shout out to Marchand too, just for the way he's played lately. Like I think as he's getting further removed from the surgeries, you're starting to see, there are times where he doesn't have the burst that he used to have, especially when it's, been a heavy part of the schedule and it's really difficult. And like, I'll be honest with you, I thought I had low expectations for what was going to happen in that game in Chicago last night, based on the second half of a back-to-back and the way the schedule's been heavy for them. Like that game after Thanksgiving, I knew was going to be tough for them because it was the third game in 4 days wrapped around Thanksgiving. And you knew that last one was going to be like a ragged type game, and it definitely was. But you got to give credit to Marchand for stepping up, not only with the words and the accountability, with the way he's played. Like, he was a big part of the reason they won that game last night. And stepped up to the challenge and finished off a bunch of plays at a time where the Bruins need finishers.
I think he's adjusting to how he has to play now. He's not turning guys, defensemen, inside out anymore. I mean, it's very rarely happening. And he's got to learn how to just chip the puck past the guy and then go to work. And he's adjusting.
You're right. He's doing a lot more.
When he's trying to, Steve, to your point, when he's trying to do it, he's losing the puck now a lot.
When he was a younger player, he used to do this thing where he'd get in the corner, from the corner to the half wall, dart back and forth, and tire out a defensive pairing and allow the Bruins shift changes. This was a Julian method of putting a sleeper hold on a team. And Marchand was great at this, and always curl forehand back. Always make his play to the forehand side. Somehow the opponents never picked up on this. And yet this seems to be recurring now. He's starting to get back to that a little bit, which I'm thrilled to see, because I feel like it's been one of the more effective things he's ever been able to do. And he can still do. He doesn't cover zone to zone the way he used to. There's a lot of situations that he used to, like a couple of strides and he's gone. He didn't skate like that anymore.
No, but the finish around the net and being at that around the front of the net for a lot of the plays that are happening, like that's never going to go away for him. I think that's always going to be something that's there for him, and he is adjusting maybe doing that more at times. Let's take a pause in the podcast to talk about our sponsors at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't, make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinion into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. That's right, Picksmas. You heard it. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Tage Thompson for more than 3.5 shots on net, Brady Tkachuk for more than 3.5 hits, and Nathan McKinnon for more than 23.25 time on ice. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard, too, for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get back to it, boys, with Elias Lindholm. We talked a little bit about him earlier on, but I do want to hit him as a topic. 3 goals and 13 points, I think it is, in 28 games. On pace for 9 goals and 38 points this season, which is obviously much less than they projected, than they hoped. I think there were ideas that he put up 40-plus points and 40-plus goals and 80-plus points when he was centering Brady Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, or not Brady, Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau out in Calgary, and that maybe if you put him with Pasta and Marchand, or put him with Pasta and somebody else, maybe Zacha, that the offensive numbers would really go back to those levels or something close to it. We have not seen that here. He's had a couple of good goals. He's had some good games here and there. But Steve, I start to look now that we've seen 3 months of him, and wonder if he is, not a number 1 center, and maybe a number 2 center, but certainly not the setup guy. It feels like that Pastrnak may need, or that they thought they were getting when they signed him over the summer.
Well, he doesn't look like it. He may be a guy that takes a long time. I mean, he was taking a long time in Vancouver, and if we were to believe the rumors that were out there, that he was actually available after Vancouver had traded for him. But then playoffs come around, and he's one of their best players. So maybe he's a guy that takes a while. Defensively, he's looking better. He's looking like the guy that they got. He did lose a guy in the Detroit game, but Raymond was able to score that third period goal. But overall, defensively, he's been better. Offensively, he seems off kilter. It seems like he's flat-footed a lot of times when his line mates think he should be moving.
Or not expecting the puck when the pass comes his way too.
Right,
I've seen that too.
Right. He's still a little out of sorts, and he doesn't really. He's not really part of a situation where they're whipping the puck around, and it's not dizzying as a good first line should be. It's gonna be a tough contract, to look at if this is all there is. I still think it's early to make a judgment, but it's a little concerning.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see more and more. Like I think your point about sometimes players, it takes them longer to really get sort of comfortable, to show their full range of their game, like to get chemistry with the guys they're playing with, like all that. I think that's definitely something you got to keep in the back of your mind when you're watching him, even now, even though it's December, because it does take some players a long time to get sort of into that flow. And what you're talking about is absolutely right as far as a top line center or a top line when you're watching them play. And it bleeds over into the power play too, where he's in the bumper. He's in an extremely important position in that power play, that top unit, and is a big reason and a part of why they're struggling so much this year, because he's definitely not the player that Bergeron was, where there were points where he would get the puck in the bumper, be ready to shoot immediately, and would have a great shot on net that would score, and was a viable weapon there, and made defenses have to worry about him when the puck going into that middle bumper area, and freed things up for guys in the other spots in the power play. So it's 5-on-5 and power play wise. I think his struggles have been a big part of the offensive issues that the Bruins have had in the early going. But, Mick, to Steve's point, I think we do, while starting to look at it and say, what do we have here, also have to keep in mind that he may still not be exactly what he's going to be when he's fully comfortable in a Bruins uniform.
When Patrice Bergeron got his first $5 million a year contract, there was a stretch of the season where he didn't look like that guy. But everybody knew from his career to that point to trust and believe that he was going to figure it out, because he always does. I think the Bruins pro scouting this Lindholm for a long time thought that this guy is probably the closest thing that they could find to replace Bergeron's presence in the lineup from a hockey widget standpoint. Now, he does sneak up on people and make some really artistic back checks that a very high level,
and he's hard on pucks too.
Yes, he is.
He's very hard on pucks. Like, I have noticed that about him.
He's a sneaky
he
hitter.
Battles.
Yeah,
there's no
he's
question.
A sneaky physical, and so the final frontier for a player like that is probably the offensive chemistry. And in his case, what does it look like? I don't know. Am I sure it's coming? No, I'm not. And so I'm a little like you guys in this one here, but I do not feel like, this could be a real problem, this contract. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In a couple of years, this might not be a lot of money in the NHL.
That's true.
So I'm not really sure.
The thing I look at with Lindholm, everybody looks at that year where he had Gaudreau and Tkachuk, and he had that 80-point season. Both those guys left the following year. He still had put up a 64-point season, which is basically an average David Krejci season, right?
Yep.
So, he wasn't – I can't say that he was carried by those guys in that spectacular year that they had.
No, he was the glue.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Bruins really want from him. I don't think they'll look – I mean, they're going to discuss thresholds of point production, goals, assists. Of course they are. But I don't think that they're predicating everything on that as much as they are saying, look, we got away with a good season last year without a high-end center. We had Coyle playing above his comfort zone, and he did really, really well. We moved over Zacha, and it lasted most of the season. We had to change it around and put Geekie in the middle between two skill guys at the end in order to somehow fill out two lines, similarly to what Chicago did in the 13 final, putting Michael Handzus up there, who had probably to that point played more fourth-line shifts in his career than top six ones. So, I think that there's guys who can fill roles and do things, and I don't think they're worried about Lindholm. I think that they're just more like, we got to just keep on working at it here and figure out what's going to make this thing tick for him offensively and bring that part out. And I think if the wins are on the board, I think that they'll be very patient where it concerns his offense.
Yeah, no, I think so. And as long as he continues to play the good two-way game that he's playing, I think that the alarm bells aren't going to go off there either. But he plays such an important role on the power play unit, that top one right now, that he has to, figure out a way to be more of a threat and to figure it out offensively if he's going to play the bumper and continue to be in that spot, because it's just not going to be a functional power play if he's not a threat and if he's not really doing anything when he gets the puck and kind of not even ready for passes when they're coming his way in the middle there. So
they had interesting in practice the other day, before practice, they had the 5-man unit all together. There weren't any coaches there. The 5-man unit came out and we're just passing the puck around. And Lindholm was taking a lot of shots from that bumper.
Yep.
I don't know if it was the other 4 guys were saying, you got to shoot this. But it was interesting to see.
Okay.
Yep. And honestly, a lot of times when Bergie was out there, by himself or working on things at practice, in the last 4 or 5 years he was playing, he was working on that shot. He was out there in that bumper spot, and he was in that high slot area, and he was working on firing pucks and catching passes and getting, working himself free to shoot pucks and be a viable scoring option there. So that's
he was
good.
He was their Ovechkin before Pasta was. Bergeron.
Yeah,
exactly.
Bergeron.
And that's what opened things up for Pasta.
And Bergeron didn't do it because he aspired to score more goals in his career. He did it because he thought the Bruins needed it. And so he trained himself. But that's him to a T.
Absolutely. All right. On the other side, the other new guy that was kind of, catching some slings and arrows in the first 20 games as well, Nikita Zadorov still leads the league in penalties and penalty minutes. And I think we all expected that to be the case. And I think that's perfectly fine, honestly. If he's getting some hard penalties in there, I think that's part of his game. Had a really good game against Detroit, seems to show flashes now of, what he can do, and is definitely, I think, played better since the coaching change as well. Just your thoughts, guys, and I'll start with you, Mick, on what you've seen recently out of Zadorov, and if you're starting to feel like you see a little bit more of his game. I like he's going to make mistakes, right? We've seen him, make some bad decisions with pucks. We've seen him far away from the net at times when he needs to be closer to the net defensively. I think we've seen him do something, definitely take some penalties at times, but I also think we've seen everything we need to see that he is going to be a factor in the playoffs, and that he's going to be like what they need him to be and what they want him to be in the postseason when it gets to that point. And we'll see some brain farts and things during the year. But probably less of that when it comes playoff time. But your thoughts on Zadorov?
Well, with the last name, a lot of comparisons were naturally made to Chara and with the team he was coming to and the age that he was coming to them at. That said, I think what we're finding out is that this guy is much more of a Brent Burns, of an Ally Afraidy, of a wild card kind of a player that's kind of complex to manage his effect on your team or on any particular game because, he's a hammer and you got to swing it and you got to figure out how to swing it and you got to kind of try to curb and minimize what the damage is going to be, the self-inflicted stuff. But I think that he's that kind of a player on this team who's going to present a lot and impact a lot, and trying to get him in mindsets that are going to play to his strengths and avoid the unnecessary things is really hard. And it's especially because there's no doubt the refs were all over this guy to start the season. And I think the worst thing would have been for him to try to back off. I think what he's got to do is, it's kind of like a Bill Belichick coaching pass defense in the early days, whether it was the Jets or the Patriots. Take the pass interference calls, be in these guys' faces, get those fingers in their eyes, do everything you can, and sooner or later you will win the war. It'll happen. And I think that's the way the Zadorov thing has to go.
I would agree. You got to take the good with the bad, because there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be times he goes over the line and all that stuff is going to happen. But I think there's enough good, impactful stuff that the Bruins needed that he's going to bring to them that you absorb all that other stuff. Steve?
Yeah, I think his game started to trend in the right direction after the Lindholm injury, when he the Hampus Lindholm injury, when he took on a greater role on the penalty kill. And the penalty kill in turn got a lot better when he took on a bigger role. He's obviously a little bit of a wild card. I still get nervous when he's got the puck behind the net, the Bruins are changing, and he's surveying the ice. Like, what's he gonna do? But I like what he brings. He brings a little fear factor. It's like Randy Johnson, throwing behind a guy's head for whoops, sorry, that one got away.
Well,
it just makes other teams wonder what's going to happen.
If you feel like that watching him play, and we all feel like that watching him play, what do you think guys that are playing against him feel like, not knowing what he's going to do out there? There is an absolute fear factor when it comes to, like, you're not quite sure where he's coming from or what he's going to do on the ice. Like, the Bruins needed an element of that, I think.
Yes.
It's good trend. It's a good trend for the Bruins.
I loved too. Yes, I loved after that Red Wings game. The first question out of the chute after the game was, "Do you feel like this was your best game with the Bruins?" And he's like, "No." Next question. He's like, he's a wild card a little bit after the game too, which I kind of like.
He's fun. He's fun. He'll answer questions. He's good.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we've got a. All right, we're going to take a pause to thank our other sponsors real quick. Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruins tickets, but also if you're looking for tickets to the Patriots, Celtics, or even comedy or concert tickets as well. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They give you priority Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, tickets, theater, etc. All in pricing, which I love. You toggle this feature and it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout. I can't stand surprise fees at the checkout. Seat Views gets you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Mick, what time is it?
It's game time. And listen, that's the first time in sports history that 110% has meant something. So
that's right. Usually it's a throwaway number, not when it comes to Game Time, Mick. Game Time means business with 110%. They're going to make that work. And we salute them for it. All right, let's go tweet of the week here. Question from MJC Senior 11. He asks, he says, Patra should be in Boston, learn faster, improve faster, adapt faster to the NHL like Low-Rye by playing here. Same for Merkulov, Lysell, need NHL exposure and opportunity now, or are we waiting for another training camp? Steve, your thoughts on all this? While I will say, I believe I looked it up the other day. Lysell has 3 goals in 20 games down there and is a minus player. I just don't get the Lysell thing, aside from the shiny new toy object factor from Bruins fans, because he's just not earning it by the way he's playing in Providence. But I think we will see Patra up again at some point this year. He's doing fairly well down there. I think he had 5 assists in his first 8 games. Merkulov has already been up before, but I credit the Bruins. I think they do this the right way, where they don't promote guys until they actually deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Patra deserved to be here at the start of the season because he had a really good camp. Okay, then his play fell off, and hey, you're 20 years old. You know, it's not the end of the world to go down to Providence.
And he wasn't playing a lot here either. He wasn't going to play huge minutes here. He's much better off playing 16, 17 minutes down there for a while, playing all situations.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't getting any, real, distinguishable power play time. He's got to go down there, do it all. And Lysell, I don't know if the staff got down on him after he had a no-show on that first preseason game when everything was there for him. Because he played well after that. He played okay after that, I should say. It's just you got to score some goals. You got to produce. And it's not happening right now for him. He's doing some things well, I guess, but all I can look at is where's the goal production?
Where's the beef?
And it's not there. Yeah.
It reminds me of Martin Samuelsson, a guy that I really kind of was excited about because I thought the guy could skate circles. And that's literally what he did while he was in the Bruins organization. and it never really went to the net in earnest. I know that Lysell kind of gets this thing a little bit where he gets yapping with opponents. He likes the trash talk and stuff. That's cool if it translates to something. But
Marchand uses that as fuel. It's perfectly fine for him to do that. It brings out the best in him. Like we saw it with Biz challenging him before the game last night and chirping at him, and then he goes out and scores 2 goals. He translates that into production always.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's just something there that, there are certain players in NHL history, including current times, that for whatever reason, they're better in the big league than they are in the minors. I don't think this is a case with any Providence Bruin this year. I think this is a case of if you could be successful here, you could be super successful there. I don't think there's a single player that I could say that about right now. I don't think there's a quirky fit. Maybe Mason Low-Rye was one of those guys at one point. I'm not sure. But I don't think that Fabian Lysell is one of those guys. I just think that he has yet to figure out how to apply his best self to the American League game. People clamoring for him to get an NHL shot simply aren't watching him play down there. They've never laced up a pair of skates.
No. And look, they're kind of in the situation that Low-Rye was last year, where he bounced up and down a couple times. He was back and forth, and there were a couple stretches where he logged time down in Providence that I think helped him. and helped him, because similar to Patra, he was playing a much bigger role down there, and it helped him sort of become his best self towards the end of last year when he was playing really good hockey. And even this year, I think with Lowry, we've seen a lot of peaks and valleys. Like, there's been highs and lows, much more than I thought we were going to see out of him this year, where he's had some good games and some bad games and some good stretches and some bad stretches. But, he's gotten to the point now where I think you hang with him because he can help you at the NHL level. And I think he can handle if he's in a third pairing and playing 15, 16 minutes.
Right.
I think he's gotten to that point where he's okay with that.
You're gonna have mistakes with a kid like that, and you got to live with him, because no matter when you bring him up, they're going to be there because of the way he plays the game. But he's got super skills, so you want to see what he can do, because he applies it. And I think that Monty, in his desperation to try to make the Bruins a stronger team down the middle, recognized that Pavel Zacha had been his best forward this year and moved him to the middle. And I think that's what leveraged Patra to Providence. That said, I agree 100% with the benefits of him being there. David Krejci played there the whole season at that age. This can only be good for Patra.
Yeah, no question. All right, boys. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS. And give $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks run your game. Also, when you're looking for tickets, Game Time is the place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Stephen Mick?
That's Game Time.
Game time. All right, Mick, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
And I agree with the Tage Thompson recommendation, especially after he gets snubbed. So
that's right. He's going to be pissed, and he's going to be firing that biscuit, Mick. No question about it. Tage Thompson on Prize Picks. Go get it. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.